different, you know, they just, they don't want
Kind of a rural area.
Yeah. We paid our $100 each.
So anyhow,
That's too bad, yeah. Yeah, you
so it isn't a sure thing.
no, you never know. You never know.
Yeah. So I got confused. I got your comment.
Right.
And I was looking at the map.
stay. I don't want to be a part of that.
Where are we?
In February, they said, well, first available appointment, Pittsburgh Airport, July 7th.
Danny Ross's place is.
So we thought, okay, we'll take it.
Ran down, she didn't get her package.
Right,
And
this is where he parks
July
his
approached,
ambulance.
and we started talking about visiting family in Iowa. I said, well, what's the point of driving 3 hours to the
They're down
airport
that
and
same
coming
road.
back home, and then a few days
Discovery.
later
Well,
driving west
you go around
again?
back. There's a huge parking
So
lot.
I
let's
know I
schedule our
probably, there's
trip.
never a car in
We're
it.
gonna stay in
So you come off
Davenport.
of Discovery
They
Road.
usually say the Black
And
Hawk
then-
Hotel
It's just kind of an
downtown
access to the
And
Denver.
this existing building, and this is a ramp, and
Call
there's,
them.
right there is the place that you drop off.
No rooms.
For AAU.
Tried another
They
hotel
rent
across
this
the
section
street.
here.
This was
That's where the AAU
2 months in advance or a month or
sale
two
thing.
ago.
So
Across the
what are they,
street.
they
No
want
room.
parking over here?
Turns out it was the John Deere Classic Golf Tournament that weekend.
And they have these spaces on here.
Okay, well, right here's their dumpsters.
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 Here, they're bad.
I got the British Open, they tried,
This is the
yeah.
main entrance.
Exactly, so, yeah, and
If you go down,
I'll tell you
What
a
do they need?
story after the meeting's over about our.
Because everybody doesn't want to park over here? That's what I'm thinking, is what I'm
They
thinking,
have-
what I'm thinking is,
have
that's what
some
Linda said. I was
potential,
thinking,
maybe they're gonna
Place
build
a called Stomp Box.
I said nefarious at home.
Fabulous.
And Linda says, you're using that word too much. So we have to look up what it's at.
a minute or two before
It's a, the kids are familiar with it.
We went to Front Street.
Yes, this is, and Front Street is very good. Linda fell in love with their cherry bomb.
So, yeah.
Long
I was
ale.
using it, must be nefarious. Because I said the
But we
same
ended up
thing.
staying
If
at
you get the parking guy,
hotel.
says we're gonna have
near the
almost
St.
nothing to
Agnes.
say
Yeah,
about
closer up to
what goes
There
on.
were pros and cons.
Alright.
We had a better selection of restaurants
Oh,
up there than we did downtown.
We will not be here
There
tonight,
isn't that much downtown anymore.
and nobody is gonna talk that
They
long,
don't even do
right?
this.
It's never us.
Oh, no.
Literally never.
But I mean,
It's always Mark.
the dry one. There's no one's ever there, ever since Locus Engineering, and you know, and I worked in this building here, because at one time, a long time ago, there was a company called Airwalk. They had started around here, and
How can we be talking about anything remotely that
then they
is?
got into sneakers.
Yeah, but we're
They
appointing
were
a
using
committee.
Penn State kids as designers, and we went in from an architect.
Yes, I believe that, but once you put it in committee, that,
I mean, we're gonna try to make our decisions on that sort.
You know, like 50, 60 inch monitors for computers.
You guys will work on that.
Because they would take tennis shoes for snack work, they could be all rotate.
But we thought we would just
This was
kind of
like
figure out
90s, and they had this kind of, and then they moved to Colorado. That's where, it was cooler to be there.
That's where everything is now.
Yeah. So all that stuff we built just got trashed.
chainsaw he was demonstrating, starting up a chainsaw right next to him. Right next to him, ripping out.
They were only there for like 2 years, and they probably did that. Yeah, we built them partitions with the desktops, we programmed them, we dropped the cables out of the drop ceiling for them. I mean, it was a room twice as big as this.
And they're,
Order we
you know,
built
they
it.
tear up the ground a lot less, they could put a single horse and go in areas where, a tractor can go, so.
You know, a lot of wood.
They had some, they were still going on.
Friday night, we were asleep.
Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, gardening.
What are we waiting for?
The alternate, Sedalia.
Oh, it's an alternate act. Slam the gavel.
Except she's on pretty quick. Within like a minute and a half of us opening the meeting. We'll give her another minute.
One more minute.
Give her
I
another
got up
minute.
to Tennis Alley
Yeah, it's gonna be a long meeting, I think.
Their front yard,
They must have things to say.
from top to bottom.
We had it hit every tree.
So we had Bill is here, Jackie,
So when we were on vacation, my friend Amy had never been in a casino before. When we went
Roy's
to
wife.
the city, and she played all the games. So I sent her a message and I said, "Are you at the public Harry asking if you're here with your boss game?"
There you go.
Used to come the first Fridays.
What's the thing is how the power goes out of Goldsboro nowadays.
Is that Roy's wife?
Looks crossways, transformer. I think we're pretty lucky.
Yes,
Yeah. That's it.
it's only been years.
Is she checking up, is Roy checking up on us nefariously?
Yes. Yep. Spot.
Here's the Wi-Fi password. Yeah, we found the Wi-Fi password for Amy so that she could use the extra packet.
Oh, so I shouldn't write on this?
Always do it after the plan, too.
Well, you can write it.
yeah, that's a good idea.
You can. Oh, county please.
Nefarious.
Oops. Hold on. And do you know which one?
It's
Subversion with
Which
criminal intent.
Wi-Fi? There were several.
Is that what it means?
Yeah, I'm using a little out of context.
Okay.
Openfire 3.
We called this a wish list last time we looked at this thing, and it's like, what?
Couple weeks before
It has to be.
we went by.
We have any more. Why do we bother making these things? We would- it's the same thing with the parking lot.
Gives you a year.
Amy, I'm gonna get going. We can shift this part to after the lot thing, if we need to. Oh, great.
Yep.
Okay, let's get going. Call the Harris Township Planning Commission meeting of August 16th to order. Sorry for the delay. We've got a full agenda tonight. Let's start with looking at the minutes from the July meeting. I know that Kent had forwarded to staff and volunteers an amendment he wanted to make on page 3 around vehicle stacking on Old Bollesburg Road. Any other comments or notes or changes to the minutes as written?
So I'll make a motion that we approve the July 19th minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes passes. Public comment. Thank you all for being here tonight. Any of you here for items that are not on the agenda? Hearing no to that, we will move to tonight's agenda and the numerous things on it. Anyone have a comment before we hear a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So we have business tonight, including a new alternate member with George Harrington resigning and Jackie Shader joining us from the alternate ranks. We have a new alternate, Sedalia Cornelio. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that you come with some experience.
They didn't bring snacks.
Didn't get that memo. We'll share the preferred snack list with you. So thank you for earlier serving on the Borough Water Authority from the township. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Okay, Todd, we got a lot planned to talk about.
Yes, on July 7th of this year, staff received from Pentair Engineering a preliminary land development plan for the industrial park property adjacent to Discovery Drive that proposes to provide additional parking for an existing building and to provide amended stormwater management on the property to allow for a portion of the lot to be better prepared for future development. Staff completed 2 reviews of the plan, the second of which was included with the agenda. as well as reduced size copies. I have 3 sheets of the plan. Behind you on the wall is a full-size copy of one of those sheets. Given the size of this room and the distance away from it, I'm not sure it really does any good, but it's there in case somebody wants to get up and look at it. As this is a preliminary plan, the Planning Commission must provide the first review and recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The final plan, once preliminary plan has been approved and signed, is routed directly to the Board of Supervisors. Staff's recommendation is to move to recommend approval of the Lot 1 RRR Units 3 and 4 preliminary land development plan to the Board of Supervisors, contingent upon satisfactory completion of all outstanding review comments from the principal planner, the township engineer, and the zoning officer. I will point out that Chad Stafford from Pentair Engineering is in the audience if you have any specific questions, and Kent did send an email this afternoon with a question about some parking that I'm sure you'll want to talk about.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Yeah, I know that Ken has a question, and we can get right to that, and then address any others that people have. So Kent, why don't you explain what's on your mind here,
I'm just going to
please?
reiterate, it's Jerry Northrich's comment 8 about the 10 parking stalls that are right at the main entry point to the large existing parking lot. So, and he was commenting about one thing about a stop sign, but also that the configuration of it part of it being on a curve on each side was irregular, where cars would have to kind of back out into a double intersection. And but I'm also going to point out that that's probably going to be a pretty busy area, and the configuration there has some poor sight distance as you drop off. There's a little hill there, and it drops off and goes down a curve. So I think cars that would park in that location might have, it could be an accident waiting to happen with the number of cars that are probably going to come through that main access point. So I'm going to recommend to Pentair that these 10 spaces not be constructed, they not be used, and actually be removed from the plan. I don't see a need for them. I mean, at this point, they have.
But again, the goal there was to create as many parking spaces, further imposing parking spaces that would be unrealistic for someone to use and have to travel a long distance to get to that building. Kent, would you think if we created a requirement for those spaces that they had to back in to the spaces so that they would have?
I put that on.
That's okay.
Thought I had it on mute.
Do you think it would be reasonable? What if we reduce the spaces to 5? And what if we made those 5 spaces such that in order to park there, you had to back in? We could paint the entire private driveway as identifying yield. We can put a hump in, something to slow down the traffic to bring it to the attention. We've already put stop signs there. Again, I'm just trying to maximize the spaces to get them what they want. But if we can reduce it, pull it away from each of the edges, make it a requirement that those spaces back into them so that they would have full sight distance whenever they get into their car to pull out. And I could probably find locations to squeeze another 5 spaces. Primarily in the main entrance as you're coming down, we have 5 spaces on your left-hand side, and then I think we have 10 and 5. I could probably get another 3 spaces there, and I may be able to get another couple spaces slid in there. But again, the goal is to get 126 spaces for them to meet the requirement for selling the building to Dr. Gang.
So when you say 126, you're not talking about the whole site, you want 126 within so many feet of the
Within
building?
the vicinity of that building, yeah. And that was kind of his wish and want whenever he agreed to purchase the building and occupy it for the number of employees that he felt that he would have in that space. Now, the remaining of the property, You're right, there's a large amount of parking spaces. But as they've been trying to do for the last 15 years that I've been working on this project, they're looking for one. There's 5 spaces, and then I think there's 10 spaces there. So we have the ability to probably place 3 more spaces.
On this? You have a motion on the, you say aye? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that recommendation is passed, thank you. Mark, official map update process.
So the 2021 work programs of both the Planning Commission and Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee include updating the in 2008 and has not been updated since that time. I had been to both the Planning Commission and Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meetings back in March and kind of gave an overview of what the official map is and how it works. And we had informed both the committee and the commission at that time that there would be a future meeting where you would both meet together to talk about this, and some things kind of came up in planning, so it took us a while to come back, but we're here now and ready to kind of move forward with this update process. So my intention this evening was to provide you with a PowerPoint, but it turns out we don't have the necessary AV equipment to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give you a brief verbal update. I'm not going to read my memo to you. I will just go over kind of some of the highlights. So,
hey, Mark, sorry to cut you off. Before we go any further, could the people from the Parks and Rec Committee be introduced, and we can know who's here from that, please?
Sure. Diane Farr.
Nice to see you, Diane.
Steve Rhodes.
Thank you.
Diane Ishler.
Diane.
Susan Hammersmith. Jenny Evans.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
yeah, not a problem. So the official map is a tool that is permitted by the municipality's planning code that municipalities can utilize to help plan for and prioritize investments in the community. Good examples of this are future public lands and facilities, things like streets and trails, parks, and open space. And what it is when a municipality puts one of those types of facilities on the official map, they're declaring a municipal interest in acquiring land to develop these facilities in the future. So if you're a property owner or a developer and you're looking at a piece of land and you see the official map shows a street on there or some type of a park or pathway, that's an indication that the municipality has an interest in developing something on that land in the future. So if you have intentions to develop it, you're well aware that the municipality also has an interest in developing the same property as well. How it works is that whenever a development is proposed or the intent to develop is given, what happens is a municipality has up to 1 year to acquire the land or easements needed to develop the facility that's on the official map. And the key there is normally the MPC requires a municipality to take action on a plan in 90 days. But this actually gives the municipality an entire year to work with the developer. It also incentivizes the developer to work with the township, especially if they want to get land development approval quickly. They'll hopefully work with the municipality to try to find a way to make it work. What's shown on the map doesn't have to be developed exactly as it's shown. Maybe they're willing to provide an easement that's slightly different in alignment, but it still meets the intent of what's on the map. It's kind of a starting point for discussion. So really what it comes down to is this official map should include facilities that are supported by the elected officials and by the community at large. And the key there is that if we're going to show things on an official map and there's no interest in actually developing them, it really is kind of a waste of time on the part of the developer and the township to even enter into any negotiations. So the township should be interested in supporting the facilities that are shown, both philosophically and then financially as well. As it's going to typically it's going to take money to develop whatever is shown on an official map. Really the facilities that are shown should be based on some type of adopted plans or policies that the township has in place. And the key here is that it should not be a wish list. We should not show things on the official map just because it might be nice to have that someday. It should really be something that the township indeed wants to have and is willing to follow through on. So this 2008 official map, this was the first official map that was adopted by the township. It identifies proposed roads, bike and ped paths, and parks.
I think it's pretty fair to say, I wasn't here, I know I wasn't here in 2008 when this happened, but talking with those that were, I think a lot of facilities shown on this plan really fall into that wish list category. They were shown on the map, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of follow through when we had the developments proposed. A lot of times it was not necessarily something the township wanted any longer. And so a lot of what was on here was not developed when we did have a development plan come in. Now, that's not saying that there was nothing done, because certainly we did have a few things. I think the Rocky Farm, there's some road connections that were shown on there that definitely took place, as well as a bicycle pedestrian facility that's not quite as shown, but nonetheless is going to be developed in a future phase, as well as the bike path along Warner Boulevard. It's another good example of something that happened that didn't involve a development plan, just involved PennDOT making some changes out there. So I think what it really comes down to is what's shown on this map right now. There's some facilities that are just unlikely to be built for a couple different reasons. The location, surrounding properties have already been developed. We may not have any opportunities when nobody's going to be coming in with a land development plan. Some of them would be very costly to get the right-of-way that might need to be acquired, and certainly the feasibility would be difficult. I think a good example is facility number 25 that goes up past the old Bollesburg Elementary School, which is now St. Joe's Academy, I guess it's St. Joe's Academy. That's a good example of, in order to put a bicycle pedestrian facility along there, the road's already not that wide anyway. Maybe a good location for a signed bicycle route with signage, but be very difficult to actually acquire right-of-way there without taking someone's front yard to do so. So one of the big questions I think is the committee and the commission move forward in talking about updating this map is a discussion on what types of facilities you feel should be shown on this new official map. From a transportation perspective, you can look at things like streets, maybe planned improvements where there's problems at an intersection where maybe there needs to be some improvements made. Certainly bicycle facilities that could include, and I think we could get a little more inventive with some of the symbology on the map. It doesn't have to just be an off-street facility. It could include signed bike routes that are on the street or bike lanes on the street. Thinking of our road diet out here along Bowl Avenue would be something we could show that doesn't require additional right-of-way, but it's an improvement that the township is interested in. Sidewalks is another good example of something that could be shown. And then possibly bus pads and shelters. That would be something that we could talk with CATA if you're interested in and see if they feel there's a need to put any of those out here in the future. We have parks, open space, and conservation, so future parkland, any type of open space that the township would want to acquire. Stormwater facilities can be shown, as well as floodways and floodplains. Again, something that should probably be discussed and determined if they should be shown. And then other municipal facilities, there really isn't a limitation as long as it's something that is intended for the community. We discussed recently with all the village parking issues, maybe municipal surface parking lots in the village. I know that like Ferguson Township updated their official map here the other year and showed a location of a future fire station. So you can include a lot of different community facilities on an official map. It's just really important to know that you have a basis for doing so. So in that memo that I prepared, there's a couple different plans that I talked about. We have the existing, the 2013 Center Region Comprehensive Plan that has a lot of policies that support certain types of connections. We have the 2015 Center Region Bike Plan that actually reflects a lot of what's on our official map now. There's a Harris Township Parks Plan that recommends focusing on recreational corridors and connections. That was updated just earlier this year. And then there's the Bollesburg Small Area Plan that did identify some needed sidewalk segments, provided some recommendations on other connectivity throughout the study area, and includes a recommendation for the road diet. So I think, moving forward with updating the map, it's going to be important again for the committee and the commission to decide what types of public land and facilities you think should be shown on the official map. And I think the bigger question is how should these locations for these lands and facilities be identified? Is there additional planning needed to identify some of these facilities? One thing that I would recommend that was included in here is I think that it would probably be beneficial for the township to consider preparing some type of a connectivity plan, pedestrian and bicycle master plan type document that's going to show where these connections are desired by the community. I know right now there's College Township is working on a pedestrian master plan in their municipality, and there's some really nice online mapping tools that we could solicit public input, where folks can actually go online at a map and they can draw the facilities they think they would like to see. And it just takes everybody's input individually, and we can look at all the maps collectively later on. But I think that with what we have in the comprehensive plan, the Center Region Bike Plan, the Parks Plan, and the Small Area Plan, it seems like most of what's being talked about is more connectivity throughout the community. That's not just auto-centric, but rather multimodal. So that's my kind of spiel for tonight on what I think the committee and the commission should talk about, and be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Question on, so the official map, we've talked, you mentioned that there should be things like stormwater, potentially identifying stormwater on here. Is that
Can,
correct?
if it's something the township wants to do.
And potentially additional parks. But is it something where we should look at when we focus on this, things that are not already in probably some sort of documentation, such as stormwater and requirements and so forth?
Well, I think like for stormwater would probably be if the municipality knows we have a stormwater issue, and we're gonna need to acquire land to remedy that, that would be when you'd wanna show stormwater on here. I mean, we certainly can show existing features that are already documented, if that's what you're asking.
No, I was just curious, just throw back to 2008 when we first did this. And we were looking at things that, you know, what would be, we weren't concerned about that. We were looking more towards the connectivity issues, the bike path issues, and so forth. And we looked at it, and we kind of looked at putting everything up there that we thought we'd want to put. And so, like, I don't think we talked about stormwater, and I don't think we talked about some of those other things.
Right.
So I was just concerned, questioning that.
Yeah, I think, you know, ultimately it comes down to whether or not the township wants to use the official map to try to inform the public about those additional facilities. I mean, I think streets and bicycle pedestrian paths, all that, and parks is kind of a more, I think, universally understood. That's probably something the township is going to want. And whether or not this map is the right vehicle to try to convey that to the public.
Right. I had a question too about the flood control and stormwater. And so to your question, do we have issues that are major enough in major storms that we need to add stuff? Or can we just kind of move ahead from that?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things we might want to do is have a conversation with our engineer, because we're an MS4 community and we're required under our MS4 permit from the state to do certain pollution reduction programs and projects. And I know we have identified some, and we could take a look at them and see. A couple of them are on the Military Museum Avenue. So we can certainly ask the engineer if that's something he thinks that we should include.
Okay.
And that may actually buy us some favor then with the state of Pennsylvania when they come in and review our MS4 permit and they say, oh, look, they've actually put this on their official map. They understand the importance of this.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Mark, thank you for that. There's a lot to consider here and steps to take. Yeah, please.
Can you go over to the microphone, Jenny, so we get you on the Zoom?
You?
Oh,
It's right there.
over the table.
Oh, I see.
Thank you.
So does the official map have to only be a static document, or can it have overlays online? So for example, could you have a version of what we have now and online be able to overlay stormwater or overlay something?
Well, I think probably the best way to answer that is whatever we show on the official map is in terms of proposed facilities, that needs to remain static unless the Board of Supervisors updates it again whenever that happens. But we can always take this map like we have here right now, put it online, and I can add other layers that you can see what else is going on in the community. I don't think that's a problem. It's just wherever the lines are shown or the polygons where you're wanting parks, those need to remain static. But other stuff can be added and taken away at least from an analysis perspective.
How difficult is it to get that type of facility or application out to get public interest in it?
To put something together to be online wouldn't be very difficult at all. Once we have, like I could do it with what we have currently very easily. Wouldn't be hard, but anything that we propose, you work on and you put together, we can easily put together and put out there for public comment as well.
Sorry, Diane.
Sorry.
Okay. This is nuts, yeah, all right. This is nuts and bolts, okay? It would help us, I mean, again, it would help us if your presentation that you were going to show, which, you couldn't, is it possible Amy could put it online, so, on the Paris Township, and that way we could refer back to it when we had questions?
I can email it to you.
Well, that's just to me, but what
Well,
about,
to everybody that's here.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. Another thing is, of course, there's, some things are inaccurate, and I'm assuming that you're going to start by updating the names of the elementary schools, the Discovery Drive, that kind of thing. I don't know if Ashworth Woods is supposed to be identified on there, but I couldn't find it. I don't know if that's because that's a private but anyway, that's just another example of just updating it. I'm embarrassed to say this, but the numbers on there, I couldn't figure out what they were keyed to. Is there a key I missed somewhere along the way?
I think there is some.
I think I have the key on my, I'm sitting here with my computer. I think I have the key. Let me look and see if I have the key.
Well,
I ask as though my computer is not right in front of me.
Make sure that gets emailed to everybody as well.
yeah, that would be very helpful. And just the last comment, since some of us have been here for 2 Monday nights in a row, just to reinforce, when you brought up parking, looking for places to put municipal parking, or I'm calling it municipal, whatever, township parking, that would be really an asset. Thank you.
So I found the key, and when I found the key, this is from 2008, so I haven't looked at this in a while, we had goals of the official map. Would you like me to share those with you?
Sure.
So one was to provide the ability to cycle/walk from State College to Rothrock State Forest. 2 was to promote and provide walkability between neighborhoods, which is what we're still talking about. 3 was to interconnect neighborhoods to facilitate the flow of traffic. And 4 was to provide parkland within a half-mile or a 10-minute walk to all neighborhood residents. So I might ask that as we talk about what goes into the official map, we talk about those goals. And I think all of them are good, but I think and the Parks and Rec Committee, I think, would agree with me that the parkland within a half a mile or 10-minute walk is probably one that drops off in favor of this connectivity. And I think Supervisor Lord is the one who said this to me about creating recreation networks within the township and connecting those. So I will send this out to everybody as well. Yes. Yeah, sorry.
Just bring it over with you, you can handle
I would emphasize the one about getting that to Ross Road, because everyone's talking about how dangerous that road is.
Yep.
And it's a huge asset. So,
And
I would make sure that stays high on the list.
one of the things I think we want to do with the 2022 project, and they're supposedly going to be giving us some alternatives here, I guess, in the fall, is I think we would like to talk with them, because down in the Philadelphia area, they redid the 202 Parkway, and they put in a split rail fence and a shared use path on a 4-lane highway. And so it was a dedicated facility so folks could bike through there. So there is precedent for PennDOT to do something like that. So I think we want to say to them, one of our goals in our community and one of our longstanding goals in our community has been to make this connection. I've actually put a bug in the bike community's ear as well. I've heard from some folks from them and said, start making these online comments so that we can continue to bring this up. Because that's the only way we're going to get it. That's how we got Warner Boulevard. We got Warner Boulevard because we had mentioned about wanting that connection. And then PennDOT came to College Township and Harris Township and said, hey, we've got this idea, what do you think? And we were like, no, this is the best idea we've ever heard, it's on the official map, we love you, let's do more things, so. Yeah,
Ish?
ish. I mean, I think we need to be, because of everything that's going on with the virus right now, who knows if we're gonna get back into virtual
agreed.
land. But yes, and the Parks and Rec Committee actually is meeting 2 days from now, on Wednesday. So we'll continue, I think we'll continue this discussion at their level and have them start looking at some of the items. I think we should start with looking at the items that were on the 8 plan and seeing what we want to take off of it first. And then going and talking about what we want to put on it. So if they start on the Parks and Rec side of things and maybe some of the pedestrian bike stuff, and then you guys next month can focus on the pedestrian bike stuff and the road stuff. And then we can have sort of a meeting of the minds.
After our September meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
How do we
Jeff?
get other townships involved in this? Because one of the connecting parts that I see that would make sense to me, I mean, I could take 5 or 6 things off this map right now that are never gonna happen. But that new baseball park in Oak Hall, you know, they have a path around it already, and they're going to build that, I don't know, would you call it 17 or 23? I'm not sure where the road goes down, the new road that's come on and out of the back of Kaywood. That you could have a connection there for a bike path or a path from those ball
We
fields,
talked
which
about
gives
that.
you some kind of connectivity to another, you know what I mean, another place, because that road is gonna go in. So that one would make sense. I'd get rid of 9 because there's already a big sign stamped in the ground behind the Yoder thing, do not trespass. So I don't think that one's gonna fly. 4 is never gonna happen. And you're never gonna, number 7, going across the Elks Club, that path that goes over the Elks Club Road, that goes in front of 2 tee boxes. That is never gonna happen. But you could possibly get it up along 322. They might let you to come up that piece of property and along 322 to connect over. But not in that location right there.
And thank you, Jeff, and I'm sure there are other things that are gonna
Yeah.
come up as just, impractical and not measure sort of this,
But how do you get the
committed
other
to
township
developing.
involved in it? I mean,
So-
because we only have a small part of that park up there, right?
Yeah, so we have 5 acres of that park. So there's a requirement in the MPC that we actually have to send our official map to adjacent municipalities, and they have to review and comment on it. And so they will look at it, and we've seen Benner Townships, and I believe we've seen College Townships when that came through. So they will have that opportunity to look and provide comment. And then, I mean, fortunately, we have a very good relationship because of the COG, with our neighboring municipalities. And because that park is a COG park, I mean, that's something I think we could go back to the COG and say, hey, look, we put this on our official map. This is something we're really interested in seeing. I mean, you'll note Hess Field is shown on here as a future park, and we made that happen with the COG, so.
But I mean, that's happening so quickly because we're already talking about that development happening and that road coming down, right? So how do we get that developer involved about maybe making a path that goes from the ball field park over? And I guess it would be connected to the Kaywood Park, you know what I mean? But you'd be coming across that field where the ballpark is, and you'd be able to get up to that spot. You know what I mean?
Facility
But-
number 7 along 322 does connect to the Oak Hall Park. And it does cut across over here to Kaywood.
Okay.
So I think where you're talking about, where number 17 and 23 would require people to ride out along.
Well, I'm thinking about, have you ever been up to the ballpark and you can walk completely around it, and they
Yep.
built that beautiful path? And then off of that path is gonna be the development that comes out of Kaywood, right?
No,
No.
17 and
Is that further
23
down?
on there are basically where the Kaywood development was. Kaywood North and Kaywood North Estate lots, and neither one of those has a road going down to Linden Hall Road. In fact, 17 goes right through the middle of a detention basin, I think.
I mean, that's where, that 7 is, that's the route that the University Area Joint Authority just ran
Right.
a line in that same location,
Right.
so.
And that bottom, that little green triangle at the very end of number 7 is the Oak Hall Park property.
Up there.
The very north part of the map.
There,
Yeah, I see
That
it.
is it.
Wow.
Yeah, right there in that little corner, we own that little teeny green triangle, right?
That's our 5 acres, man.
That's our
Right there, that's
connectivity.
us, right there.
That's where you plug in.
Right along the highway. Okay, any other comments on
So
the?
I was
on
gonna
this
say,
conversation?
if
Sorry,
if
Ken,
you
go
could
ahead.
send out that, key,
I just emailed it to everybody.
okay. And maybe if we could all, maybe just do a little homework and comment about which ones we think should be eliminated for whatever reason. You know, for like what Jeff was saying, I say, you know, we could eliminate one because it's already, the Misty Hill Drive is already there, right? So we don't need to have one that's already there.
Right.
And 4 ain't ever gonna happen.
Yeah, so I think if we would all just mark up a list and then ahead of time of which ones we think should come off there, that would help facilitate.
Clean it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
clean it up so we could focus on the things we want to do.
That we can do.
Yeah.
And do we have money?
So-
I mean, we keep talking about Harris Township's gonna have some skin in the game, and I'm like, well, do we have money?
So I will say that things in Harris Township financially are much different than they were in 2008, when we really had no skin in anybody's game anywhere. We were begging to be in the game. We do have money. We do actually we're getting $632,000 from the federal government as part of the American Rescue Plan Act money, which can go towards water, sewer, stormwater infrastructure, and some other things. We also have a special projects fund, and one of the things I've long talked about, and I think the supervisors agree, we're putting dedicated money into that fund every year through the tax base, and having a plan where we could say to residents, oh, this item is shown on the official map, and it's very important to the township, and so we have a pot of money, and we're gonna use that pot of money to purchase and make this item happen. You know, when we did this map in 2008, and I believe, Todd, it started in 4, right? Yeah, it was before I was here. But when we did this map, it was really just a giant wish list because we really never had the means to go out and say, oh, we would really love to make this happen. We would just go out and say, oh, we would love to make this happen, Mr. Developer, will you be nice to us, basically. So now we have the means to take care of that, so.
All right.
Jeff, excuse me, Bruce.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. In terms of connectivity, which I really support, think of our parks as a park system, not individual parks. And to the degree that we can connect those parks together, I think would be a wonderful thing.
Thank you, that is an important point.
So if the planning commission's amenable, we'll put this on your agenda for next month to sort of go through the bike, ped stuff, and also the road stuff. The Parks and Rec Committee, their original plan for their meeting this month got rained out, so we're gonna work on this Wednesday when they
Good.
meet.
Great.
And then, you know, we'll see where we're at after that. And we can go through at the staff level as well and take off, like Hess Field has obviously happened, and Misty Hill Drive, and some of these other things.
And I'll generally just update the map base layer, so you'll have update on where everything has changed.
Great.
Great. Anything else on this exciting planning tool? All righty, let's move on, please, and thank you all committee members for coming tonight. Appreciate your help with this and your service.
Oh, no, you can't leave. You have to sit through the whole meeting.
They have another meeting this week. That's not fair to them.
can't leave.
You're gonna go have a cocktail somewhere, aren't you? I know.
Bye-bye. Nice to see you, Diane.
I'm in favor first Friday.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Official endorsement.
Works on the first Friday, I love it.
Okay, item number, or letter D, our village district parking
That cleared the room.
situation, shall we say.
Yes.
And complicated, and let's hear what's developing with that and some interim steps that are in mind, please.
Okay, so over the course of the last 2 Board of Supervisors meetings, we've had some business owners and some residents who were at the meetings, and we're talking about the parking regulations in the village. And folks are very concerned that as the regulations are written, and they were changed in 2018, that it's discouraging businesses from coming to the township and that they're not locating in the village because it's hard to do so. So after talking with some business owners and some residents at the July meeting, the board said, let's just throw out the parking regulations and go back to what we had before 2018, which we couldn't do. They tried to do it at the meeting, and we couldn't do it at the meeting because it's in the zoning ordinance and the state law doesn't allow that. So we went back to the supervisors and said, like, it's like a two-step process to do this because it's in the zoning ordinance. So let's maybe think about what we're doing and see if we can come up with some interim and some long-term suggestions and solutions. So what we've come up with is, I fell down a parking rabbit hole a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and looked at regulations in Elizabethtown Borough, Lancaster County, which is the community I used to work for, and also in College Township, because they have the Village of Lamont, to see if there's maybe a better way to deal with some of these concerns. Some of the concerns are right now, we have oddly shaped lots in the village. We have lots that have really large buildings on those lots, which make it hard to locate parking. We also have places where we have had businesses come in who have used the 2018 regulations, which are based on use and square footage, not employee count, which is what they used to be, and they've had no problem using them. But then on top of all of this, we have about five properties around the diamond that don't have any off-street parking. So if they were to change their use, they would have a very difficult time because they don't have any off-street parking available to them. So it's sort of a multifaceted issue. And in looking at the issue, we suggested to the supervisors that as an interim step, because we don't really want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? We want to look and see if we can clean up this problem in the interim and then work on a long-term solution. The interim solution, I found some regulations in Elizabethtown, and it was all in the memo that we gave you, but in Elizabethtown that allows for reduction of parking regulations through a conditional use process, and it goes through their planning commission and then their borough council. And then in College Township, they allow for some shared parking within so many feet of a property. And so we thought that those maybe had some promise here because it provides a little bit of relief, right? So in the interim, you know, if you have the opportunity that you could share with somebody who has more parking, that maybe gets you where you want to be. The supervisors thought that was something good we should start working on. So we're going to need to start thinking about, they said, you know, the regulations that I found are a little cumbersome, so they'd like us to look at them and see how they could be refined for Harris Township. And then in the long term, I personally believe, and Elizabethtown has 7 to 8 municipal surface parking lots. Elizabethtown's a lot bigger than we are. It's about, when I worked there, it's 12,000 people, and that was in the 90s, so it's a lot bigger now. Their central business district is long. It's along Market Street. Market Street is Route 230. They have, you know, 25,000 cars a day on their central business district. But they have a mix of businesses and residents, and they have residents above, you know, some of those businesses, kind of like we do in the village. And they have 7 to 8 municipal surface parking lots that are fairly large, something probably 10, 20 spaces in each one. And they don't seem to have, at least I don't remember them having when I was there, the challenges that we seem to have with some of the parking. So our long-term plan has always been to take down the pole shed behind the township building, and that would get us 12, 13 spaces and kind of make a little surface lot there. So that's a start. But we talked about maybe using the official map, we could identify some future locations where we might see little pockets where we could put in. Certainly we don't want to change the character of the village by putting in large swaths of parking lots. We're not downtown State College, which is not a slam against State College. It's just that's not who we are. But is there a way we can find little pockets here or there? And then the supervisors are going to appoint a citizens committee to further look at this issue. I think there's, you know, some misinformation perhaps going around. I think there's some misunderstanding of some of the regulations. So having the folks sit down and having them look at it, and I mean, I think the village district has been studied since the 80s when they started having the village district study committees. They've looked at parking a bunch of times since then, but is there a different way to crack this problem? And also finding relief for those properties that really have no off-street parking, and if they want to change a use, that's a financial hardship to them. So it's kind of where we're at. We gave you I keep calling it the parking manifesto. They're not letting me call it that anymore. But the parking memo that I put together, we'd like to start next month working on some language, like trying to craft something that you guys might be able to, help us with and see what you're amenable to and if it's something that you think it'll work for us. So we welcome any thoughts that you have. We have had, I think, 5 or 6 residents who've emailed and wanted to be on the parking committee so far, so that's great to see that people are interested in helping.
Some who are affected?
Yes,
Good.
everybody, so far, everybody lives in the village, and a couple of them are business owners or prospective business owners.
I think it's also important to point out that nobody's come to a public meeting and said this, but we've had contact from several residents who are concerned in the opposite direction. They're concerned that businesses are taking up too much parking, that they don't want as much on-street parking for businesses. They want businesses to provide parking on their properties, but again, nobody's come to a meeting and said that.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, right? Because the conversation at the July board meeting was, let's just throw out the regulations from 2018 and go back to what it was, which essentially was no more than 4 parking spaces on a lot or 720 square feet of impervious coverage. And if we do that, that throws chaos onto the on-street parking. And I don't think we want to do that necessarily, because our village is a village more of residents and less of businesses, right? And we want to have a nice harmonious mix. And the small area plan talks specifically about this issue and talks about sharing some parking with the churches and sharing some parking with the fire company and looking for opportunities for parking lots, right, to try to help take the burden off of the on-street parking. One of the things I like so much about giving the ability to provide some kind of relief and having them look at, well, my business isn't a 9-to-5 business, because a lot of businesses aren't 9-to-5 anymore. We have a dog grooming business on the Diamond that is just drop off. There's nobody going in that business and staying, right? So the Diamond is crazy at 7:45 in the morning. It's like kid drop off day at the school. And then at 11:30 when everybody picks up their kids, it's a little busy, but that's it. So if they have parking regulations, but they can say, like, we have 2 employees, our businesses drop off, why can't we be let out of the majority of the parking regulations, because the nature of our business is different? And then and both Elizabethtown and College Township have in there, like at College Township, if you're sharing parking, you have to have an agreement that you come to the township with saying, we're gonna share parking, this is the agreement, we'll look at this in a year and see if it needs to be changed. And in Elizabethtown, they have a conditional use process that says, okay, we're gonna go through, the planning commission makes a recommendation, goes to the board of supervisors, these are the criteria we're looking at, and we're gonna say, okay, so it's not arbitrary and capricious, it's based on this criteria, and then we're gonna look at it in a year and see if it's still working, so that it's not just a once and done kind of thing. I know Kent knows all about College Township's parking regulations.
And the village, but, which still has a lot of issues. But, I was gonna make one comment about the, long-range comment about the municipal parking lot. I think that in addition to some of the shared parking arrangements or, allowance for doing a study to relax some of the parking requirements, is that we also come up with some type of an annual parking fee that could, I guess it'd be similar to a tax that a property could pay if they were unable to provide the parking they needed for their use. So either if they're unable to provide the necessary parking, maybe they could pay into an annual fee, and the township could utilize that money to develop some municipal lots.
Clever way to fund it.
By the way, I was going to ask, when you talk about the pole shed, you're talking about the large one to the right of the township building if you're facing the front? Okay.
Yes.
Not the garage in the back?
No, the garage is gonna stay. The pole shed's about to fall over on itself, so we'll have a good time taking that down.
How about the lot off the alley?
We've actually talked about that as well. We are not sure, because we're moving our stuff off of there. I don't know how many parking spaces we could actually get in there. But that's something we could long-term also look at as well.
Oh, yeah, every space makes a difference.
Yeah, why don't we knock the garage down too?
The garage is actually still storing stuff. There's stuff that we need in terms of when we're doing snow removal down here, or if we're doing things just in the village that we're gonna keep in the garage, so we're not running back and forth, even though it's only, a mile away, but we're not running back and forth.
Who owns the gravel lot next to this fire company lot? So there's a clear marking now of parking that happens on one side versus the other.
It's all the fire company.
It's all fire company.
But I mean, don't we support the fire company with money? Don't they get like $95,000 a year out of our taxes as a fire company? I mean,
They
isn't that
get-
true? Don't the supervisors vote to give them money every year?
No, they have a dedicated millage, and they get about $270,000 a year out of the dedicated millage.
So that should give them some incentive to share.
Yeah, the fire company, as a fire company, they have their nonprofit, and they have ways that they generate income. So I don't know how that would play into the ways that, and of course they have the carnival, which goes on back there. The fire company is, they've been great partners with the township when we've needed space for a drop-off recycling, for example, last year in the middle of the pandemic. They did that back there. But yeah, I have not talked to the fire company to see if that's something they would want to do.
Well, we saw a proposal before this group about how to be using that space and the new and different ways that they wanted to be using that space. And it did involve parking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Car storage.
Car storage for, I think, Bollesburg Car Company.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a conversation you can have with them. I think also the churches in town, and one church doesn't have a lot of parking, but the other church has a parking lot. And, churches by and large, if they're not running a daycare out of the church, they're a weekend operation, or Saturday, Sunday, and are there businesses that could benefit from being able to, maybe you're not gonna have people park at the church and walk through the village to go shopping, but maybe you have people that put their employee parking down there because their hours are such that they're not there when the church needs the parking, when they have choir practice or whatever in the evenings.
Isn't there, I just drove by today, and, who owns exactly right behind the quick fill?
That's,
That's a fire.
That's a fire company.
Well, there had to be 12 cars parked there in a semi.
right. And sometimes demolished cars.
Well,
Well,
that's for their training, that's why there's demolished cars.
But I mean, so they're already, obviously those aren't employees or volunteers from the fire department, so there's parking going on there
There is parking
as we
going
speak.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
appears to be the Bollesburg Car Company,
yeah.
Sounds like there may be potential there. Bill, you have a question?
Yeah.
even though.
When we discussed the long-term storage situation for the Bollesburg Fire Company, the recommendation was that if we were going to do that, they would have to make improvements so that the parking lot conformed to whatever the regulations were at the time, which was curbing and paving and
Islands and...
greenery and all the other stuff that went along with it. If we go into a partnership with a church or another private entity, will we be in that situation as well?
I don't think we would go into a partnership with it. If businesses wanted to work with the churches or other businesses that don't use all their parking during the day, that would be an arrangement they would have to make. Our ordinance currently, if any of you have looked at our parking regulations, we allow for an agreement to be in place that parking can be shared on another property. The problem with that regulation is we require that property in the village to be within 66 feet of the property that needs it.
We were talking about with the Bollesburg Fire Company, if they wanted to store vehicles there, though.
Where that would be different would be that we would have to extend the range for people to be able to share the parking to 500 or 1,000 feet, because 66 feet doesn't really get you anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
66 feet.
Yeah.
Well, I think the 66 feet number was arranged by the Brain Trust, and I don't mean that in a smart way. That there was a group in the 70s that completely thought out how they wanted to see the village, and I think that was the minimum lot width, or 2 times the minimum lot width in the village at the time. So I think that's where that neighbor. I was in high school at the time, so I really don't know what the conversations were.
I wasn't born.
That's not true.
It's an interesting development over 200 years of this village is the alleys that go behind Main Street, go behind Pine Street, Chambers Alley, Pine Alley, those were all, that was parking for your horse, your cow, your goats, your carriage. And so those, some of those still exist as garages or small barns and parking lots, but many have been infilled, or there's something else there, and they took away that option. A current or previous owner took away that option to park there, and I don't know if there's a way we can both acknowledge the historical use of those as parking areas and try to encourage or incentivize reestablishing that use in areas that where maybe it could be done without too much hassle.
I mean, and honestly, I think anything is on the table in terms of like thinking about this. We don't, I think the regulations we did in 2018 make perfect sense. And I mean, again, I fell down a parking rabbit hole and I read too many parking regulations recently, but what we have is, I think, better than some of the stuff that I read. And I think it works, but it doesn't work because there's not a one size fits all, because the village is just very different. Because it was developed 200 years ago when they weren't thinking about cars, they were thinking about cattle and horses.
Well, honestly, there's not a parking regulation in any zoning district where one size fits all. There shouldn't be an expectation that every use in every zoning district should be done on every property.
Yeah.
And that should apply to the village just as much as it does R1 and commercial and every other zoning district.
So you have some volunteers, or at least people raise their hands to be on this parking regulations committee. We talked about, maybe there's someone here on the planning commission who would want to be involved, or at least an ad hoc member of that, or an occasional rep. If someone is interested in that, you could talk to me, talk to Amy, and we can see when that gets going if they're how we would plug one of us into that. And I don't think if we don't come up with someone, that's okay. We can just wait for things to happen. But if someone's eager to participate in that way, we could find a job for you.
If you love parking.
Right. Okay.
The psychiatric.
Yeah.
Say like, oh
That
boy.
comes along with That's right.
Continued participation on the committee.
That's right.
That's funny.
Anything else on this from anyone here tonight? Okay, another pickle to figure out here in the township. Okay, rural zoning update. A big meeting last Monday, I guess. Tell us what's going on here, please.
Yeah, so this is actually, I think, the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think it's a good light, not a train. So the supervisors agreed to set the public hearing for the zoning map and the ordinance for September 13th. Todd and Mark have to go out and post the area as per the MPC, and then I'm going to do the advertisements this week and the following week. At the meeting, we asked the board, because the solicitor had told us if the board goes to the public hearing and then they decide to make a change to the zoning map, it's got to go back, and we have to change the methodology in the ordinance, and it has to go back for public hearing again. So we asked the board to discuss that map to see where they were at, to see if it was ready for the public hearing. And they did discuss the Immel properties, and remember, when we had done the project, we want to see the Immel properties go rural residential. They're presently ag. We have 2 supervisors who were in favor of leaving the properties ag, and then 3 that want to take it rural residential. So we're going to have it's a 3-2 split, but they agreed to move it forward for public hearing, and the map shows it as rural residential now, so.
Okay. Do we need representation from here at that September 13th?
If you want to come, that's great. If you want to participate on, and we have 7 people watching on YouTube tonight, if you want to participate either watching on the YouTube or on the Zoom, that's also fine too. You don't physically have to be here if you don't want to be here.
Okay. Okay.
Is there a time for that meeting? 7:30?
It starts at 7:30.
To get this clear, this is all about the Okemos property.
Used to be.
Used to be Yoakum, it's Immel now.
Yeah. Yeah, I got calls about that, and I don't know, it just seemed to us, I remember when we went over that, and it was, a realtor owned it, and he had it subdivided 3 different ways, and we just thought it should be part of ag residential,
Rural residential.
Rural residential, yeah.
Yeah.
And so things changed since the time that we looked at that,
Well, I think the owner doesn't want it to change. That's the key right there. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's moving ahead. There's been a lot of tension on this, and it's not gonna be something that's gonna please everybody. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so we are ready to talk about the agenda for next month, and Amy, you included, thing here with wireless facilities. I know that there might be an opportunity to touch base on some previous business that we did. You want to talk a little bit about wireless?
Yeah, so the state of Pennsylvania passed a new law regulating wireless facilities. And that new law takes effect August 29th, and that basically dictates how a municipality can regulate small wireless facilities. So not the big towers,
Right.
but the co-location on municipal poles, on our streetlights, that kind of thing. So we have until October 28th to amend our existing wireless facilities ordinance to bring it into compliance with the new law. And I literally found this out last week, so they've given us plenty of time. So one of the key things, though, is we're not allowed now to zone out. Right now, we say that you can't put a small wireless facility in the village. We're not allowed to require that anymore. We have to allow them in the village. We have to allow them on the historic streetlights, but we can put in design guidelines, but they don't have any design guidelines as like a draft. So we can require stealth technology, and then it's like a huge discussion point with the people. So I'm going to go through the ordinance that we have and redline it, and then I'm going to reach out to the attorney that helped us the first time from the Cohen Law Group out in Pittsburgh to see if he might be able to take a look at it to make sure that it's correct, and then we'll bring it before you guys. We'll have that for you in September. And then we'll also have the official map and the parking regulations in September.
Do we maybe also move ahead with the updated residential zoning strategy, the R2, R3s, maybe?
Yeah, I've been working on those
Yeah.
kind of draft regulations and hopefully can bring something
Okay.
happening.
Well, it's interesting, these agendas seem packed, and they are packed, but, and I always think these are gonna be longer meetings, at least the last couple, and they've turned out to arc to being. So good job with keeping us moving forward with a busy agenda, but also prepared so we can be efficient with our time. Thank you for that. Okay, reports. I attended the CRPC meeting earlier this month, or maybe it was late last month, when Amy was out of town, and I think minutes were sent around last week. I would just say of note to this rural residential zoning district topic that we were just talking about, there were letters. We talked about it at the CRPC meeting, and there were some comments from volunteers as well as staff, and I guess they forwarded along some comments from that for township staff to just acknowledge and be aware of in terms of moving this forward. So that's I think the most important takeaway from that Center Region Planning Committee meeting. And I did not see a CCMPO. Did they meet?
They don't meet again until
Yeah,
September.
okay.
So we'll get something in
Good.
September.
Okay, you want to run us through recent actions by the BOS, please?
Sure. We just talked about the village district parking regulations. We also talked about the public hearing for the rural zoning update. They also approved the Blair Amick Laughlin minor subdivision plan. They approved an update to the Act 537 plan to make biosolids improvements at UAJ's treatment facility. And one, Mr. Bob Igo has been appointed to replace George on the Spring Creek Watershed Commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Where is the Blair Amick Laughlin minor subdivision?
It's a piece of property off of, is it Bailey Lane or West Main?
Bailey, I don't know if you guys remember the last number of years, it's been going on for probably 15 years now. There's a little triangular piece on Bailey Lane, just, I guess that's south of Blue Spring Lane.
Yes,
That used to be
yep.
owned by the Bull family, and these folks bought it, and what they did with this subdivision plan was add sections of it to their existing properties.
Got it. Yep. Good. Okay,
You guys win.
well done. Who's gonna move that we adjourn?
Girls. I'll move the adjourn.
Great. Thank you, new member. All those in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting?
Aye.
We are done. Thank you.
Is there a bar open down in Bollesburg?
Duffy's, probably.
Is Duffy's open?
No, not on Mondays.
No,
Not on
Why
Monday.
is Duffy's parking lot still
The bar might be open. Kelly's might be open.
Supervisors.
I don't think Kelly's, I don't think Kelly's
Yeah,
open.
that's not when